So Pratap Banu Mehta is considered as foremost intellectual in India. Yes, but everyone may not agree with the same statement because he is hated a lot by right-wing sections of the society. Okay, so that article is not important to us, but there is a thing called as a Tina factor. Tina factor. What is Tina factor? What is Tina factor? Whatever is the heading is Tina factor. There is no alternative. So there is no alternative is also called as a Tina factor. Okay, that means we justify by saying there is no alternative. Why certain politicians should continue? There is no alternative. Why criminalization of politics is okay? There is no alternative. So Tina factor. Why railway should not be privatized? There is no alternative. So it's an excuse given by most of us for no alternative. It is also moral abdication of duty. Yes, it is also moral abdication of duty. Whenever you say there is no alternative, this is the best thing we can get. You are always escaping from the grassroots reality. That is what Pratap Banu Mehta is trying to argue. So ignoring all the Modi bashing, you can try to grasp the last paragraph. This is 1 point, this is 1 point, this is three points, then there is this point. So this is the last paragraph. It's not about Prime Minister Modi, it's about overall democracy.
What is exactly referring to by saying aesthetization of politics?
Aesthetics. Aesthetic means what? Look and feel. Aesthetic is not simple. It's aesthetics, like look and feel. The moment you enter a 5-star hotel, you expect certain aesthetics, like aesthetication of politics that is trapping India elites in a land of unreality. This is also something what we refer as, Michael Sandel refers as skyboxification. There is a concept called as skyboxification. Have you heard about it? Skyboxification. So, I mean, Michael Sandel, you know Michael Sandel? He's a Harvard professor. His YouTube, his ethics videos in YouTube are very famous. Highly recommended watch. There are 14 or 15 videos of Michael Sandel in YouTube. He's a Harvard professor and a well-renowned philosopher. He brought in wonderful concepts. One of those concepts is skyboxification of American society. What is skyboxification? Normally, when you go to IPL, you see a IPL box, Vivo box or something. Okay, so the people in the box does not mingle with the people in the front row seats. Okay, in Telugu, Nela ticket and balcony. Balcony lo kuda you have some super luxury, right? Okay, so that is skyboxification. That means we are living in a society where we don't have any touch with what is happening in the ground reality, and we are the ones who will frame the policies, or we are the one who will control the society. That is skyboxification. Yes or no? Sainath also brings this argument very nicely. The per capita income of a country is very less. Okay, what is the average income of a member of parliament? It is 10, 20 or 40 times more. So a person who lives in luxury, who is a crorepati, who has all the access to the resources, okay, he will think, my mind is thinking in the rational way, but you don't know the actual ground realities. That difference, that lack of understanding of the ground reality to the elite, the people who frame laws, is a skyboxification. So skyboxification prevents you from understanding the problems of the society. Okay. Because obviously, see, for example, Salman Khurshid or anyone, any elite, all of them are elite, right? What the Prime Minister Modi refers to call as Khan Market Gang. Yes or no? See, all the NGO heads, whenever you see them, they meet in Delhi, they meet in posh hotels. There are, even NGOs reflect as if they are a five-star hotels. Okay, the meetings take place in a very elite fashion. All of them are uber rich. Yes or no? So the thing is, for them, the communalization does not affect them. Why? As I told you, Banjara Hills won't say communalization. Why? A Hindu, a Muslim, a Christian, everybody will be living side by side. And what is the common denominator on all of them? All of them are super rich. Okay, they don't follow the norms or traditions. They make all vices. Yes, I mean all in every term of the thing. Or they are good also. Okay, so it affects only the lower sections of the society. So the elites might be totally blind to whatever they are saying. Elites here is not only Banjara Hills people. Elites here can be you, me, or people sitting in software houses. I'm a software engineer in Bengaluru. I'm tweeting a lot of hate. Okay, I'm very active in social media. I preach a lot of hate. Or on Quora, I preach a lot of hate. So I'm blind to the ground realities. Okay, every tweet I send or every reinforcement that I give to the society, okay, very subtly also, like very small subtle messages also might translate into ground level atrocities. You won't lose your life, or no one will lose his or her life because of all the hate, but someone somewhere will lose their life because of your hate. Okay, so that is a plain truth, but we are blind to that plain truth. Okay, next is there is perhaps a will to simplification, is suspension of thought in the hero worship. Hero worship is something that we are always in favor of. We always have idols, right? See again, we 100% will never agree with any one person. We don't even agree with Pratap Banu Mehta. All the intellectual thought process in the world, he might still be biased. He's also a human being. We don't want to bring his hate of something else into our thought process, but we will rationally analyze whatever he is saying, right? So there is a concept called as hero worship. There can never be a wrong thing done by political parties. Okay, dissent or criticism is what makes you stronger. Yes or no? Dissent or criticism is what makes you stronger. If every feedback I give you is fantastic, wonderful, you will never grow as an aspirant. If I say this is the most useless point, this is not the way you have to write, that is when you start thinking. But if all you have is yes men, everybody say, you are God, you are perfect, you cannot do a mistake, then you will live in an illusion that I can do anything and get away with it. Okay, so that is not something that is good for democracy. And the last point is, there is no alternative way to say we are okay with communal politics, we are okay with authoritarian repression. So subconsciously we think that India needs a dictatorship. Okay, majority of Indians subconsciously think India deserves a dictatorship. Manam mata vinamu. This is how this is how Indians are like. We have to be told very severely. Only then India will work like China. Okay, so for all the hate of China, we try to emulate a lot of China. Yes or no? For writing sake, for argument's sake, we say China is a dictatorial country. China is like that. China is like this. But we secretly want to emulate China. We want to be ruled by a dictator. We want to get things done quickly. We don't want delays. Okay, we don't want checks and balances. So that is an inherent thought process. So obviously the outcome of political leaders are also in the same fashion. So as I said, BJP is not the manifestation of the hatred or Hindutva in the society. Whatever the hatred or communal thought process were already there in the society was brought out by BJP. That's all. BJP did not create new India. The old India was brought out by BJP. Okay, as James Allen says, circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him to himself. Think about it. Circumstances do not make a man, they reveal him to himself. So situations don't create you. Whoever you are is revealed in tough situations.
There is a dialogue. దమ్మనేది ప్రదర్శించేది కాదు, అవసరమైనప్పుడు అంతటా అదే బయటకు వస్తుంది.
So someone
చార్లీ
nice. I think he has watched this Game of Thrones episode 1. Tyrion Lannister's introduction. Okay. No? Okay, fine. Same whatever you have told in Telugu is there in English in the same way. Okay, so
So who is your favorite lead in Game of Thrones?
lead
Any actor?
any actor. Obviously Tyrion, right? Tyrion Lannister. The survival, the survivalist.
How did we watch it in it's only the name.
It's just the name, right? It's not a spoiler. Spoiler is me telling the climax.
I'm the only one who survived the last when I watched the movie.
Oh, which one? Batman. Okay. Which one? Acha, Ra's al Ghul. Okay. See, actually, I know you can blame me. I accept that. But the thing is, any Batman fan, like if you're not a Batman fan, any Batman fan knows that Ra's al Ghul is a immortal being. He never dies in any Batman movie. All future spoilers. Okay. So, Ra's al Ghul never dies actually, at least in the comics. Okay. In movies, in part 2, part 3, he doesn't even come back. Okay, so don't worry about that. So in Game of Thrones, I haven't said anything. Tyrion Lannister. So I didn't say what happens. I said so. So simply put, democracy needs choices and alternatives. As long as democracy do not have alternatives and choices, we live in an illusion. Again, we deserve the rulers we elect. Okay, the silence of the good men or the activism of the polarized. These things create democracy. Okay. There is a quote, right? The fools are full of enthusiasm while the wise are full of doubts. Okay. So in the same way, democracy, the polarized sections are the marginalized sections or the hated sections. These groups are very, very active. Whereas educated people, not literate, educated people are more or less silent. So that leads a lot of problems in the society. And luckily, most educated people become elites. They make good life, or they go abroad and all these things. So it does not affect them 1%. Yes or no? Yeah. So that's one important thing. Second thing, this article, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. So Mother Teresa Charitable Trust is in the news. It has become a political contestation between Mamata Banerjee and Prime Minister Modi. But the simple thing is rule for all. If there is a Foreign Contribution Regulation Act, if the books are not as per rules, they should be punished. Okay. But at the same time, if the books are good, they should not be punished. Both are responsibility of the state rather than the charity itself. If the charity is doing all the good things, people have a right to know that it is following all the rules. If the charity is breaking the rules, people also have the right to know that the charity have broken some rules. Good or bad, people should be aware. You cannot hide them. The most common theme is that NGO money or the money that is received by these charitable institutions is used for religious conversions and anti-national activities. That is a big criticism against NGOs, not this one. In general, NGOs have this criticism that the money that is coming for welfare activities is going into religious conversions. So that is why there is a huge amount of religious conversion activity happening. Okay, a lot number of churches, mosques, and all these things are happening because of money that is supposed to go for aid activities. Okay, next is anti-national activities. That means this money is used to create a narration against India. Okay, in Kundankulam or some other place. Okay, so they assumed that NGOs are helping anti-national activities to create reports or to create a perception against India. So that is why Home Ministry is trying very hard to create a stringent mechanism where the money does not flow into anti-national activities. It is a gray area. There are genuine cases where the steps taken by Home Ministry is for right do your own agenda. Okay, so 80% I am doing all the good things. 20% I am using the same rules to beat NGOs which are critical of the government. You understand the logic, right? 80% I am doing the right things. 20% I am beating the NGOs or institutions which are against my government. Okay, so nobody can complain because 80% good things is hiding 20%. Okay, so the problem is this probably is a genuine case. Okay, it's a victim of all the collateral damage. Okay, but again, rule is rule. If they have violated the law, no emotions, pure rationality, it is 100% justified to punish even the best of the charity organization. Okay, but as the editorial also argues, we are in a place where the backdrop of attacks on churches, okay, our anti-conversion bills are sending a disturbed signals. Okay, Christianity has a lot of lobbying power internationally. Okay, the moment you project India as a anti-Christian or something like that, if even there is a 0.111% scope, okay, people will take that to create a lot of negative narration about India. That will become a PR disaster very, very soon. Government has tried to justify that by saying, we have not blocked any FCRA rules. It is a charity which itself has suo moto decided not to take foreign donations. We haven't touched it. So government is trying to create a counter narration, but there is a kind of movement in India where minorities feel that they are being marginalized even further. Okay, so that is one thing. Good things and bad things, when they mix, they create a gray area. We cannot blame the government with any empirical data. They are doing something good. Definitely NGOs are misusing the funds. NGOs are creating a culture of business. NGOs are becoming business. Everybody will start an NGO, take donations and live a luxurious life. That is not what NGOs are supposed to be, right? So that is why they have brought in a good regulation. But hypocrisy also have a limits. All political parties are okay with FCRA rules. All political parties are eligible for foreign contribution regulation. I mean, they can receive foreign funds. Okay, and the best thing is hypocrisy. FCRA rules are amended. Political parties are not actually under the rule. So both Congress and BJP came together and they retrospectively amended the FCRA Act, saying that all the political donations received earlier also are okay. Right? See, if it comes to me, I can modify the law as per my needs. But if it comes to NGOs, I'm very stringent. That is hypocrisy. Yeah. Okay, fine. You get the basic idea, right? Good NGOs are there, bad NGOs are there. It's very difficult to separate good and bad. Rule is rule, rule for all, no emotions. If they have followed rules, they should have all the freedom. If they haven't followed the rule, they should be punished, even if it is Mother Teresa charity organization. Okay. This is one more wonderful article. Digital public goods. What are digital public goods?
Online education.
Sorry?
It's data portals.
Mostly e-governance. E-governance are e-services that are provided can be considered as digital goods. So what he's trying to tell you is government has heavily invested in India Stack or this Digital India platform, which is helping a lot of students in the backdrop of the COVID. Build back better, so we are having access to better education facilities. So he says students are getting education through textbooks. People are able to get download textbooks through the scanning QR codes. They have better access to things. So what is the advantage of all these things? Public service delivery gets cheaper. Public service delivery gets more targeted and more efficiently delivered. It's low cost, high outcome investment. That is the most important thing of this entire article, right? Digital goods. Digital goods are a good thing for India. Now he goes on to continue by saying how much we are reaping the benefits of digital goods. For example, UPA platform, school textbooks, right? The influence is very high. And what he does not actually mention is the digital divide and all the common themes that the lack of infrastructure. But this is a positive article. We will try to think of positive articles. Look at this paragraph. I mean, the rest of the thing is same. How digital technology applies: PAN cards, UPI, textbooks, public service delivery, and it will spill over. That is what he's trying to argue. This paragraph, sorry, emerging economies. That paragraph. I hope you are reading the same paragraph. So simply put, what is he trying to say?
Digital diplomacy.
Digital diplomacy. Simply put, India is having a lot of potential to develop a lot of goods like UPI, textbooks, CoWIN app, or any other thing. We can make them open source, okay, and we can give it to developing or least developing nations. So just imagine TechMaitri should be spread. Technically, you can summarize in such a fashion: TechMaitri, just like Vaccine Maitri, TechMaitri can be a term where, simply put, open source. Open source means all of you know open source, right? It is not a proprietary software. And if Kenya is having something like CoWIN portal or UPI like platform, it will revolutionize the financial inclusion in such countries. Singapore is adapting, Bhutan has adapted UPI. So Singapore and India is exchanging on UPI platform. So UPI will become very popular. So we can give it to third world countries that will promote India's soft power. And it will also help a lot of social good like education, access, and all these things. And India is in that position to provide all these services. And India should provide. That is what he's simply put saying. So in the mains answer writing, you can think of it like this. What are the outcomes of Digital India? Digital India is not only limited to India. Digital India can also help in IR. Digital India can help in soft power. Digital India will help promote goods and services at a cheaper price. Why? Digital goods creation is very cheap. To create a CoWIN app, all it will take me is 10 crore rupees. Okay, to construct a road in Afghanistan will take me a lot of money. Yes or no? So if I can create a CoWIN app without any flaws or minimum bugs, okay, as minimum bugs as possible, and give it to Afghanistan, probably students in Afghanistan will remember India for a long, long time. So that can be done by India with the least amount of cost, and we are already doing it for ourselves. So why not do the same thing to others? If not for everyone, at least for SAARC nations. Our immediate neighborhood: Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, Maldives, Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Okay, and the advantage is it's open source, so nobody can say that India has hidden a virus or malware within that app. Yes or no? So nobody can have any qualms about that app. So it will only be made better rather than anything else. Clear? So that is the advantage of Digital India. So simply we are expanding the scope of Digital India to diplomacy, diplomacy to TechMaitri, TechMaitri to you can also use the same point in China, India-China relations also. What is India's Chinese apps? Chinese apps are looked as suspicious. Chinese hardware is also looked as suspicious. FBI has reported multiple times, whereas Indian apps are open source and they promote welfare. Okay, tech diplomacy. Clear? Good article. Just a simple value addition, but very nice. One more fantastic article. For some reason today Indian Express is very good in all the articles. Yeah, this article is about judiciary's role, the lack of diversity in judiciary. Yeah. Now, why we need more diversity in judiciary, right? And what can be done about it. So Chief Justice Ramana is very active on making statements. So after he became Chief Justice of India, he made a statement saying that lawmakers are not making laws with right orientation. That means they are passing bills very quickly. When they pass the bills very quickly, it's very difficult for the judiciary to read between the lines. So in future, if there is a case on a bill that is passed by Parliament, the judiciary will look at the debates of the bill, then it will understand the intent of the government. Based on the intent, it might expand a fundamental right or something and justify the bill. Okay, if a bill is introduced today and it is passed tomorrow, there is least amount of debate, and it does not give any insight into the mind of the lawmaker to the judiciary. That is one criticism. Okay, and he also wants to promote more women in judiciary. Yes, he's also vocal about arbitration, ADRs, alternative dispute redressal mechanisms. Okay, so he's good in a lot of things, and he's even open to modify collegium system to an extent. Probably the talks are going on between him and the law minister of the country. Okay, in all this context, what the writer is trying to say is there should also be more diversity within the judiciary. He cites some facts which are from old data, but still, out of 47 chief justices of India till date, at least 14 have been Brahmins. Okay, so Brahmins are the upper caste people are dominating the judiciary. A lot of lawyers are from upper caste. There is lack of diversity from OBC, SC, ST communities in the higher judiciary. That is his argument. Okay. He even cites a lot of judges within the high courts, not only in Supreme Courts, are also from a particular community, right? Then he goes to justify that yes, it has provided wonderful chief justices. It's not like they are incompetent or anything. One of the best legal luminaries in the world are from that particular community, no doubt about it. But there is lack of diversity from other communities as well. That is not good for India. Okay.
He writes this: merit and quality do not have anything to do with the massive underrepresentation. He says. Then, but
the system.
How is it justified?
The system. See, what he's trying to talk about is the entire system. So if you see, it's more like hereditary, right? Hierarchy. So that ascribed nature. Chandrachud's father was senior Chandrachud. So Kaju's uncle was Kaju. So everybody it's a continuing lineage, more or less. It has created an ecosystem where people are not allowed to climb up the ladder. That is one way to look at the thing. So we can create that alternative. See, there are questions like, should All India Judicial Service be introduced? Okay, should we have All India Judicial Services, like just like IAS exam? Should there be a judiciary exam for filling the vacancy at the grassroots level? What are the merits, demerits? That also has been discussed multiple times. Okay.
So recently, when a transgender was
promoted, finalized.
No, sir, in Delhi High Court, transgender was elected as a judge.
Transgender or LGBT?
gay, sir.
So, okay. Was it finalized? I haven't followed it up. It was there in Hindu saying that he was nominated. Did the government accept it? I haven't seen that, so I was not sure whether to follow it up or not. Follow it up. If the government has given the blessings, then it is finalized. That's a progressive move. So the summary is more diversity brings better democracy. So everybody can have a request. Everybody can have a dissent. I'm happy with all the things that judiciary is doing, but I'm still not happy with lack of diversity in judiciary. That is his core point. Yes, you can be progressive. In spite of all your progressiveness, still I can have complaints about you. And how does he justify this? He justifies this with wonderful quote by Justice Gautam Patel. And I really think you can write this in your answers, essays, introductions, conclusions. Somewhere you can use this. Done? What do you understand by that?
Supremacy of constitution. Everything will come and go, but the morality of the constitution,
The morality of the
Or the-
constitution.
the idea of constitution
Hmm.
will be always supreme.
Mhm.
Yes.
So the major takeaway is, as long as you are under the umbrella of constitution and you take the constitutional routes to express your thought process, dissent is very much okay in democracy, or noise is okay in democracy. See, if I'm being very bold, if you take the time of Ranjan Gogoi or Chief Justice Bobde, okay, there were a lot of issues with Chief Justices. Okay, Supreme Court was not looked in a positive light. History will be the draft. History will prove them wrong. Okay, both Gogoi and Bobde were not 100% justifying their roles as Chief Justices of India. Whereas Ramana is considerably more advanced. I mean, he's doing all the right things, but still there is some lack. So that is also okay in democracy. Okay, there is no too much noise or too much dissent in democracy, as long as it is constitutional. In the constitutional scheme of the things is a very, very important thing. Not unruly behavior, not criticism, not mindless criticism. As long as you are having that civil discussion, everything is okay in democracy. Modi is doing 99.9% work. I can still cry about that 0.1%. Okay, so that's a important lesson that you have to remember. This we have discussed multiple times, but this is a holistic mains answer. So you can literally write a mains answers based on his thought process, and it's very mature, definitely not written by an IAS officer. Okay, rules of online game. Okay, so rules of online game. What is he trying to say? There is a, see, the holisticness of the article. First, he starts with a nice introduction by saying what is the present scenario. It with a fact, with a punch. The average time spent on games post-COVID, pre-COVID has gone by 65%. And more than 43 crore people have spent time on virtual gaming. So an introduction should have a punch. If I just tell you that, online gaming has increased, it's one thing. Telling you by facts that 43 crore people are spending on online gaming is a impact. So that is impact creation. Okay. Then he goes on to argue how it has evolved, like temporal dimension. It's a nice essay, right? It's a temporal dimension where he argues how people have moved on to skill-based game. Now, online gaming is like gambling. Online gaming is like gambling. For example, Dream 11, India and South Africa matches are happening. Will Kohli hit a century or not? Okay, you can argue that it's a game of skill. It's a game of skill. Why? I need to know the fitness of Virat Kohli, the number of Instagram pics he's posting, his mental state, whether he's depressed or not. Okay, so I will analyze all these things. Okay, he's in the right frame of mind. He's not affected by Sourav Ganguly's interference in Indian cricket. Okay, he's fine. So that is a game of skill. Or it's pure luck, dumb luck. I guess he will score century. He scored century. He got duck out. Okay, whatever it is. So courts, various high courts and Supreme Court judgments says that it's a game of skill. Most online gaming is game of skill rather than game of luck. So it's not gambling according to courts. Okay, but the problem is, I mean, again, as I told you, many states allow this online gaming. Many states don't allow online gaming. Many states it's okay to gamble. Many states it's not okay to gamble. For example, in Kerala, there is a lottery. Kerala is okay with lottery, whereas other states are not okay with lottery. So there is a lot of inconsistencies within the country. But the problem is this: notwithstanding the legal position, a large number of people are depending on online gaming, and they are resorting to all kind of crimes. They are destroying their own lives, going into debt, going into crimes. This has been promoted. Okay. So intro. Then what is online gambling? What is the legal status? Then what is the present problem? So he has come to the problems, like people are destroying their lives in the name of online games, because people start paying with Rummy and all these things for 1 rupee, 10 rupee, then slowly they go into higher debt. Okay, during COVID pandemic, we have seen people killing each other for online debts. Many people went and ruined their life for online gaming. Okay, so what should be done? He's giving more empirical data on how online gaming has killed a lot of people. For example, there was a game called as Blue Whale Challenge, where kids committed suicide. The game encouraged committing suicide. Yes, Squid Games online version. Yes, so they promoted all these things, right? This has also happened. Yeah. So in a way, the youth, the demographic dividend of this country are destroying their lives in the name of games. As I told you the other day, a student asked me, right? When people are so interested in spending their life or wasting their life on online gaming and all these things, why are we bothered about their skills? Yes or no? So now what should be done? Ethics syllabus, second line. What is the second line in ethics syllabus?
Second line.
Role of family and society and education institutions. So instead of blaming the teenagers for spending their time too much time on gaming, we should also question the socialization process. Yes, from LKG, if they are not eating food, you are giving iPad and mobile phones. Watch rhymes, watch this, watch that. Okay, then you cannot blame them for getting addicted to too much screen time. Yes or no? It's a socialization process. How the society is changing itself into this is a obvious thing. So recently, I told you China has banned online gaming. They cannot spend too much time online. So they also can called as opium of the mind. Every generation needs opium of its time. Yes or no? During Rome time, it was Colosseum. Then we have drugs. Now, drugs plus online games. We are living the best of both. So we have gladiators. We have GTA. Yes or no? There is a game called as GTA San Andreas or GTA, right? You can literally run over anyone. You can kill anyone. So you are having the animal justification of Colosseum in video games. You are spending your life on video games. You can also consume drugs. All the three things can be done simultaneously. Yes or no? All the three things can be done simultaneously. So we are living the best of the times. Okay. So he luckily or he very nicely never said the word ban. He said a well-regulated online system. You cannot ban online anything. It will only go into dark market, which is even more dangerous. The best thing is regulation. So this is a holistic article. If you see, this is the mental maturity of the writer to cover every dimension. He did not leave any single dimension. He spoke about what is the present context. Then he spoke the past, the present, the issues, the psychological dimension, the implications. Then he is going into regulation, which is the most logical way forward. We have to regulate. Why? He also says the money that is going to come, the employment that it is going to generate. Okay, so he's talking in both in monetary terms and qualitative terms. The money that will be generated by virtual games. For example, Bengaluru have a lot of startups, online games. If you overnight ban all of them, what will happen? All the lives will be lost. India will be falling behind the ecosystem. Who knows, tomorrow we might create a game which is very balanced from the rest of the world. Yes or no? So that can be a good way for India's growth. Okay, then he also brings in the tax. Regulation has one more aspect, that is not only gaming, that is taxation. Put highest GST slab possible and throw them under it. 28%. If you have too much money, if you want to throw money behind rummy, 28% GST. Okay, that might deter people from wasting their incomes. Okay, still you want to waste, government will get some extra revenue. Win-win scenario. Okay. So he basically talks about regulating the usage of apps or buying of extra. Say, for example, you are using PUBG, but you want to buy some add-ons for PUBG. So your father should give his Aadhaar card, OTP, and his debit card. Only then you will be able to play PUBG too much. Okay, or else you will play at the basic level. You might lose your interest. Okay, or if a game should be played only by students above the age of 18, not everybody can play it. So if you are above 18, you have to submit your own Aadhaar card. Your Aadhaar OTP will be verification that you are the person who is using the app. Okay, right. And is also putting the onus on the gaming companies. See, who are the stakeholders? Taxation, government, parents, schools. He's bringing everyone. He's not touching only one part. He's not putting all the blame on the user. He's putting the blame on the companies also. The companies should educate the users. We had a similar discussion, if you remember. I told you, right? There should be a pop-up which should tell that you have spent too much time on watching Netflix. Please stop watching for some time. Take a break, come back. Okay, in that break, in that also ad will come. Order something from Swiggy, Instamart. Yes or no? Yeah, that's how things will roll out, right? Even the breaks won't be proper breaks. Even the breaks will be designed to consume something else. Okay.
Is he IAS officer?
No, I think he's definitely a minister, but that article is written by a ghostwriter in all probability. I mean, I don't want to insult his intelligence. He might be very smart to write it on his own. I don't know him. So, but my personal experience, most of the articles by politicians are written by ghostwriters. Even Venkaiah Naidu, who publishes very regularly, has a very famous ghostwriter. Right? So,
if you would go to a theater and there is national anthem playing, and two people don't get up for the national anthem, but you get up, what is your take on it? Would you ask them to get up, or you would just ignore?
Freedom of speech and expression, 19(1)(g). It's their way of expression. Let's say we went to Tirupati temple. Okay, somebody was lying on the floor. You just stood up. Which one is the best way of worship? That's your purpose, right? See, no. That is very valid. Sharanagati can be done in 10,000 ways. Okay, Sashtanga Namaskar is also one way of Namaskar. This is also one way of Namaskar. Okay, let's say you are what? Thakur in Sholay. You don't have both hands. You remember Sholay, right? You haven't seen Sholay? Okay. So, okay. Right? So what will you do?
Just hold on your head.
Yes. So there is no one way to respect national anthem. Okay. It's my right to ask you. It's also your right to refuse. Okay, that is civil debate and dissent. Right? So if I'm waving my legs or talking over phone when national anthem is playing, that is being disrespectful. But if I'm very attentively sitting and just listening to it, that still is okay. Right? Nobody can force all these things, right? Nationalism is not something that you get. Yeah? I wear a India pin every day. I stand up for national anthem. I jump red signals. Okay, I'm not being patriotic. So again, that is also an insult. Yeah. Or I evade taxes. Or I evade taxes. I don't give bills. I forge GST bills. Okay, so that is also not respecting nation. National anthem is just a outcome of our patriotism. Right? Patriotism is a way of life. It's how you behave offline also. 24/7, 365 days. Right? So that is my debate. Can you ask them? Yes. Civilly, definitely. There was actually a case, right? There was a differently abled person. Okay. So he was sitting. Some people started beating him. because he did not stand up for the national anthem. Then they realized he was a differently abled person. So it creates a lot of problems, right? This has happened actually. Supreme Court of India also made it compulsory for all the theaters to play national anthem before the movies started. Then it has rescinded the order and all these things. So always remember the best way. I told you, right? Tirumala example, Hinduism. All you have to do is plant the seed. Yes, nationalism or anything cannot be forced. You have to make them realize why they are good. Allow my India. Nobody needs to tell you. You will stand up if you are in a position to stand up. Okay, you are too much privileged, then probably also you want respect. Yes. So again, the role of schools, education, family, these things play a huge role.
The Supreme Court asking this is the judicial legislation.
Overaction, judicial overreach, or judicial activism, right? It's not at all encouraged. Again, see, we cannot make people respect. On one hand, you will go and say, Gandhi is that, Gandhi did not bring independence, Gandhi is, this, Nehru was that, and then you expect the society to understand the entire independence movement. My simple argument is this. There are people who don't want to respect Gandhi or Nehru. You are entitled to not respect Gandhi and Nehru. Okay. But Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was alive. Subhash Chandra Bose was alive when Gandhi Nehru was alive, right? So they had their own disagreements, they have their own issues, but somehow they have a civil discussion. Where did that civility go? Yes, Patel and Nehru hated each other and loved each other, but they agreed and disagreed in a civil fashion. That civility is what is needed. You have all the right to hate Gandhi, but in a civil fashion. If that civility is taught to the citizens of the next generation, they will dissent in a civil fashion. But if you teach hate, if you teach the wrong ways, they will also dissent in the worst way possible. So that is something that this society fails to understand. You can hate someone and appreciate them at the same time, right? So Patel was no less intellectual or a moral leader than anyone else. He had all the talent in the world. Still, he had his own issues with Gandhi or Nehru. He disliked them in his own passion, but he never lost his civility. Yes or no? So Patel could have said, anything and gotten away with it. He was a hero of India. He unified India. Okay, nobody would have said anything else to Patel, but still he chose to be civil. So people who have actual power are civil. People who have zero knowledge are being more hyperactive. So that is also a problem, right? Okay. The last article. It's a quick recap of all the things that has happened in the farmers bill. Madan Sabanavis is a head of a institution, right? So he used to be head of some bank or something. He was chief economist of some bank. Okay, now I think he wrote a book, so he wants to get some publicity. Apart from that, the quick recap. What he says is APMCs. APMC Act has been introduced in the 3 farmers bill, agriculture produce market committees. So before this farmers bill also, people were selling outside APMCs. Okay, then there is contract farming. Even today there is contract farming that is happening in food processing industry and some farmer producer organization. Then there is commodity exchange. That means the farmers bill have improved the scope of whatever already is happening in the market. Okay, so the farmers bill would have given a large push to contract farming. More people would have adapted for contract farming. Even now people are entering contract farming, but it would have given a bigger push. Okay, so that bigger push is lost on India, and somehow we are going back on the reforms. Okay, that is not the best way forward for India. Okay, and he squarely criticizes the buffer stocks. We have too much buffer stocks, and the buffer stocks are not at all useful for the society because we are not using it or we are not putting it to any productive usage. So the long-term damage is the reforms have not taken place. FCI buffer stocks are not going to change. Then what did we achieve from all the things? Unless we have that moral courage one cannot be sure as to when the reforms will finally be accepted, as they do appear to be many vested interest groups at work who will ensure that it will be hard to move forward. So, as a bureaucrat, tell me a solution. What should be your thinking? If you are the political masters, or if you can suggest some political masters, what is the best way forward?
Peaceful approach.
Example?
Doing a pilot project, for example, this farm, as far as this farm laws are concerned, let's say a village is totally producing tomatoes, and we can demonstrate an example how peaceful the agreement between corporate houses and farmers can be. Now, dismantling all the allegations that have been made that pauperizing the farmers and all. So that village or that particular what cluster of villages can be an example how contract farming can actually take place without pauperizing them or without giving rise to any legal things. So this is one way is executing pilot projects. And parallelly, APMC is being continued in that cluster village also. As many allegations came that
APMCs are not working well, yes?
Because as there are many vested interest groups, so we should do a project such that it will solve everyone's interest. Like everyone should get their interest satisfied.
So is it possible? Can we satisfy everyone? It's very difficult, but it should be the goal. Maximum governance, maximum number of people should be satisfied through these kind of reforms. The best thing is to put the infrastructural push. For example, ENAM, E-National Agricultural Market is there, but ENAM is not taking off. See, just like what Ola or Uber have done to the transportation system, creative destruction. So that creative destruction should come from internal process, not from external process. Okay, Ola and Uber did not bring a new kind of transportation. They entered the existing transportation, like autos or cars. Taxi is something that age old. We all know what is a taxi. We all know what is an auto, right? We all know even what is a bike share. We used to ask our relatives, but all they have done is creatively destruct it, add some value. If you drop some stranger, you can make money. Yes or no? So the mobility has increased. So in the same way, piecemeal and structural change. So you enter the agriculture from inside agriculture, you start reforming. Don't push it from outside, push it from inside. Give enough incentive for ENAM. Like make ENAM as popular as possible, where farmer will go and start selling on ENAM. Make it as easy as possible. Okay, so ENAM, that means let's say Lavanya is a farmer. She wants to sell something to she wants to sell some product. Okay, but in that APMC the price is less, but in Maharashtra the price is 10 more rupees. So she can bid her product online and the Maharashtra buyer will purchase from her. If she realizes that, and she will tell everyone else, she will literally go to every house and sell, don't sell here, sell on ENAM. So automatically everybody will start selling on ENAM, but it should be as easy as possible in vernacular medium as possible. The transportation should be there. You understand it, right? So we should make it as smooth as possible, but that smoothness is missing. Okay, so like this, ENAM is one change. Then Kirtana will have a farmer producer organization. She will tie up with these food chain institutions, Polymeras and all those things. So she will tell Umang, okay, that there is an option. So we don't have to push from outside. We have to create that internal incentive where one farmer will tell to the another farmer. All we need to do is create that thing. Or as you have said, we can go for pilot project. Let's say I'm BJP. I have a lot of majority in Uttar Pradesh. I will do pilot projects. Not only pilot projects in that village, I will also bring in all the startups. All the startups which are working in India on agriculture can come and synergize their energies in this particular village. You are free to do whatever you want to do. Okay, one wants to experiment with Uberization of tractors. Okay, this particular district is yours. Okay, you want to experiment with the drones. Okay, this village is yours. So I can encourage startups, pilot projects, everything in that particular area only. So that will actually, one thing or the other will work out. But that is happening only because of government's push. Government is not doing anything at the ground level. Government is creating what? Direction. As I told you the other day also, government has to set the tone. If the government set the tone, then startups, farmers, all other creative entrepreneurs will come and invest there. In one place. Everybody has to, all the brains have to come at one time in one place. Yes or no? Only when everybody thinking about the one problem come to one place, we'll have a lot of ideas. One is working in Bengaluru, one is working in Uttar Pradesh, one is working in Kanpur. We are not seeing any tangible or visible results. Okay, but if you actually take one state and make it a hub for agriculture, create that creative destruction, encourage the startups. Okay, you might learn 10,000 lessons as a policymaker. Why? You might find objections, you might find support, you might find hate, you might find love, you might find a lot of things. But all things at one place. Too much empirical data that can be translated into other areas. That comes from political will. So lack of political will.
So you was talking about some futures. Not understand that.
Future trading, just like contracts, right? You have coriander, you can sell coriander on a future date. It's like a contract. Futures are one type of contracts, right? Just like contract farming. Futures are a futures, derivatives, and all these are types of.
I keep hearing this in stock markets.
Exactly.
So Telangana adopted urbanization, sir.
Hmm.
So this was also one FPO type of.
Urban has a lot of macro. Urban comes from Pura, right? Providing urban amenities in rural areas. So urban is not only about agriculture. Urban has holistic thought process. So Telangana. Okay. Yes. Any questions?
What is he actually intending to say by using the futures here, sir?
So we are going back on the futures, that FPOs are going in futures. FPOs are now not going to go into futures.
He says they have to go in that way.
Right. Yes. Any questions?
In the newspaper, I came across Lado Panchayat, sir.
Ladlo.
Ladu.
Uh,
Where,
Ladlo. Lado.
where all the girl children decided will not vote if someone doesn't encourage. But that was an extra constitutional body that actually still created as it because there was no women representation.
I can brainwash as I want, right?
Yes.
So see, Ladlo Panchayat, the girls Panchayat have decided that we are not going to vote. That is very good for answer writing. Okay, you can write creatively. The ground level impact, you tell me. No, Dad, I'm not going to get married. What is the outcome? He'll go get a bucket, a thread, a rope, a stool and a rope, or the mom will start crying, or all the relatives will come and beat her. Yes. So see, that's a very wrong. I mean, it's a very wrong narration to create that this is the best way forward. People are very innocent. If you are not preparing for UPSC, okay, you won't know all these things, right? You believe prima facie. Okay, everybody is saying 21 years marriage is good, fixed, done, khatam. Okay, I can easily manipulate you. But the outcome is not going to have any impact whatsoever. Okay, the thing is, we should have created a debate in the girls that, apart from 21, if the outcome of the entire panchayat is like 21 plus upskilling, reskilling, access to education, more infrastructure in toilets, more access to internet. If you provide all these things plus 21, then I will vote for you. That is the actual outcome. Okay, for a society which believes that there is no alternative. Okay, we have already we have opportunities, but the debate is more or less missing. Okay.
Actually, that was
Tina factor. There is no alternative.
that all these things, like
Hmm.
apart from other alternatives than
Hmm.
21 age,
Hmm.
were also discussed in that. So, like, if we read the full news story, that was there,
Hmm.
but the
Heading.
in heading that was not there.
Again, that is what I'm saying. You say like we have to provide alternative education. Is there a manifesto? Is there any one political party which is saying that we will provide bicycles, cycles, and all these things? That also has to be imbibed in the mind of the families, not only the kids.
Hmm.
See, the message is not for the girl child, right? See, she is the victim.
Yes.
She knows what problem she is facing. She will be forced and married by the age of 16 to 18. She doesn't need to know that she needs better life. It is the families which have to realize that we need a better life. Yes or no? Obviously, if someone is about to be hanged, he knows that he is about to be hanged. But it's for us, the rest of the society, which has to debate whether capital punishment is valid or not.
That gaming article
Hmm.
was referring to opportunity cost.
Hmm.
I somehow miss out on what is
Opportunity cost. So let's say Umang, instead of reading DK Balaji, she's playing a lot of PUBG. Okay, so she wasted 2 attempts. Opportunity cost. Not 2 years. It's a lifetime, right? Because she could have cleared UPSC in these 2 attempts, according to her Kundali, right? Right. So she could have cleared only in these 2 years, but she wasted it on PUBG. She will never become an IAS officer. Don't play PUBG, Umang, right? So we have to read now. Okay. So opportunity cost is loss of human capital, human hours. So instead of upskilling, reskilling, and all those things, youth are wasting all the time on what?
the cost we have to pay for missing out this opportunity.
Opportunity cost. Okay, and it cannot be measured technically, right? So at the age of 21, if I don't upskill myself, at the age of 23, then I decided to go for upskilling. Okay, after playing PUBG, right? At 23, even if I learn the new skill, my salary may not increase that exponentially. It could have increased when I started in the right time. So the opportunity cost is very, very high, right? So opportunity cost is balancing out something for something else.
Something like a cognitive tax that we are putting on ourselves.
Not cognitive, it's directly opportunity. Not even cognitive, right? It's opportunity cost. You are losing something out for something. For example, 3 attempts of UPSC is an opportunity cost. You could have become a software engineer, played PUBG happily, yes, made money also side by side, get a better career progress, yes, get married. A lot of things can be done in the same time, but you are missing out on all those things for UPSC. Dobi ka kutta nagar ka nagar. Yes. You didn't become software engineer, you did not become IAS officer. 3 years wasted. Sorry?
The Russia, Ukraine, NATO, can that be a potential question for me? And its effect on India.
It's subjective. I don't think Ukraine implications are directly asked. Because everybody knows NATO is just a distraction. NATO is just a discussion for the US and Russia to get closer.
Why Israel is attacking
Syria. Western interests, Cold War. In today's Hindu, there was an article, right? See, Syria has always been a place of proxy wars. Syria is always a place for proxy wars. What are proxy wars?
No direct fight.
Yes, it's a place where allies of USA and allies of Russia are fighting. Kurukshetra, at least both Pandavas and Kauravas came directly. Okay, so in Syria they are not coming directly unless it's a air strike or last minute strike. They are not bringing the ground forces. They are just supporting their allies. Assad is being supported by Russia, whereas the rebel forces are supported by USA. And USA and Israel are on one side, Russia and others are on one side. Russia, Iran are on one side, right? So there are a lot of complications. Okay, so Yemen is also the same. Iran and Saudi Arabia are fighting in Yemen. Russia and US are fighting in Syria. Right? US and China are fighting in North Korea, South Korea. So like this, there are a lot of complications. So, and it's a tussle between Iran and Israel. So Iran on one side, Israel on one side. Iran is against Saudi Arabia. So there are a lot of complications to be understood. Yes. So do read Indian Express today's articles on your own. It will make more sense to you if you read all those articles. Now coming back, we'll discuss something about ethics too. Have you purchased that article, that book? No? What is so special about third edition? I was not even aware of third edition. Inspiring civil servants is an addition. The rest all is same. So the rest of the book is same except for inspiring IAS officers. So normally, if you have to go by syllabus copy level, I think chapter 7 is the first chapter. Theorizing ethics. So if any of you can clear UPSC, we will write a book together. Right? Published by. You don't even say your own name. No belief. See, this is DK Balaji IAS. Tomorrow Umang IAS. In small details, you like helped by Kalyan sir.
Sir, I'll write your name.
I know. Domination.
I don't think so I can write books. So
I will write, you publish your name.
So,
We will share
no,
funds.
sir, I don't know.
It's all about funds, right? Not about books.
So you write. I don't know what.
You'll write forward.
No, I don't. I've not read anything.
Okay, so jokes apart. Theorizing ethics, chapter number 7 in DK Balaji, any edition probably should be the starting point. In second edition, which chapter? All three and third editions only. Okay, very good. So theorizing ethics, 7th chapter. So that is the starting point. Okay. So you can also watch Harvard, Michael Sandel, Harvard, 14 or 15 videos. Yes. So I have told your seniors also, some of them were like, I couldn't understand the logic. So you need some common sense also to apply ethics. So I cannot teach you ethics. As I told you yesterday, ethics cannot be taught perfectly because you need to have your own rationality and common sense. So if you are unable to understand what Michael Sandel is trying to say, that means you are totally obsessed about marks. Okay. So that is not UPSC. Again, as I keep saying, UPSC 2 + 2 is not 4, it's 5 or 7 or whatever UPSC wants you to be. Second thing is, if everybody is reading DK Balaji, everybody is having access to vision material, vision videos, or whatever it is, then why are people not clearing UPSC? Everybody have the same tools. Okay, everybody have same resources. Till 2014, the papers were very much textbook. If I read Lakshmikant, questions will come from Lakshmikant. So UPSC have realized that everybody more or less from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, from Arunachal Pradesh to Gujarat have same resources, same books, same material. So the material is not the issue, it's the individuals that have to change. So if you change your mindset, that is what I told you, right? If you change your attitude, your thought process, you'll automatically get into the system, because everybody blindly believes that ethics is reading books. Ethics is not reading books, ethics is applying the knowledge. The more you apply, the better. Okay. And applying something for last 3 days is one thing, applying it for 365 days is one thing. So when you apply something for 365 days, on the 366th day when you write your mains, it will flow naturally. It appears so natural. But if you mug up something and if you reproduce it, what will happen? It is very evident that you are reproducing it mechanically, mechanistically. You are writing it just for the sake of writing. So such fools misunderstand that answer writing is everything. That is why we have 15 lakh applications and only 90 IAS course. Okay, so if you have to be in the 90 out of all the 15 lakhs, you have to be something really special. That special comes from common sense. Common sense is most uncommon, as Volater have said. So develop common sense, automatically will be there. So read Theorizing Ethics. Don't get confused. It's I think very simple. Okay. And the second thing is, do watch Michael Sandel videos whenever the time permits. Whenever you are bored, whenever you feel like watching something, watch Michael Sandel Ethics. He's very entertaining. He's also at the same time very easy to understand. He will teach you a lot of things. Then you can come back and go by ethics and human interface line by line. Okay. So if you can go Theorizing Ethics and Michael Sandel side by side, if you can watch, I mean, if you can read this and watch those videos side by side simultaneously, they will sync. Whatever you are reading, you will also listen. Okay, so that's the best way to learn, with examples. As I told you, ethics answers without examples are like curry without salt. Point number 1. Point number 2 is the rest of the things are textbook, like ethics and human interference, attitude, behavioral change, emotional intelligence, and so on and so forth. Okay, so it should not take a huge amount of time. If you read for 4 hours a day, you can easily complete this book in 1 week, except the case studies part. And never ever focus on ethical puzzles. Ethical puzzles are not asked in UPSC. Ethical puzzles means, yesterday whatever I have asked you in relation to Abdul Kalam is an ethical puzzle. What will you do? Will you save a life? So all those are ethical puzzles. Luckily for us, ethical puzzles are not the context. Ethical application of administration knowledge is more important. You will be tested as a bureaucrat. So I have to believe that I am an IAS officer. Will I do this? Yes? No? If yes, why? If no, why? It's like a flow chart. Step 1, why will I do this? Step 2, what will happen if I do this? Step 3, will media blame me? Will politicians blame me? Am I doing more than my power? Right? So tomorrow after becoming IAS officer, if a press asks you, there are no beds in the government, you will say, in the next 1 month, we'll have 300 beds. That is not your choice. That is the choice of a minister. So you cannot oversee your mandate. So like this, you will develop a template, step 1, step 2, step 3. So that can be developed. Okay. For that, at least you need some basic knowledge. Okay. So 7th chapter is hardly 10 to 15 pages. I think you can read that if time permits, today or tomorrow. Start slowly. Ethics is very easy. Trust me. It's one of the most scoring choices. So the 2 things that I teach are ethics and essay. Okay, both are low hanging fruits. All you need is to just fine tune your knowledge, and your optional essay and ethics are the most important things that will get you into service. Paper 2, paper 3, anyhow, is current affairs. All of you are good at current affairs by default. So you don't need any external push. So paper 4 is easy. Paper 1 is easy, but application is difficult. Okay. And this is pure rationality, no emotions whatsoever. Ethics is pure rationality. The more you debate, the more you think, the better you will get at ethics. Sir, even all these things are not in my mind. I don't understand all these things. Simply put, develop templates. Right? Develop templates. In the initial days, you will write it for the sake of writing, but one day these things might be ingrained in you. That is also one approach. Step A, develop common sense and write. Step 2, keep writing and develop common sense along the way. Either way, you have to develop common sense in the end. That is the summary. That is the most important thing for ethics. Net point, okay. Yes, you are about to ask a question.
No.
And there is a very common recommendation called as Subbarao. For ethics, there is a very popular book called as Subbarao. Even if someone gives you that book freely, please don't read it. Okay, except one chapter in that entire book, it's totally useless. Don't even read it. Okay, if you are really not happy with the DK biology, which is a very rare scenario, the next best scenario is Kartikeya, M. Kartikeya book, 4th edition or 3rd edition. Some Kartikeya is there. His ethics book is also decent, but you don't need anything beyond this for basic approach. This plus topper copies. This plus reading few topper copies will give you all the insights into the ethics world. From there on, keep on writing and writing. So what we can do is we can take syllabus copy, get 10 questions on each and every topic. Like what is the role of family in your personal life? If you develop an answer for that, your preparation for the topic is done. Right? Pure common sense, right? Like what is emotional intelligence? What are the types of emotional intelligence? How will it help public? How will it help a bureaucrat? How will it help society? Emotional intelligence topic is done. So like this, you can break every syllabus line or every syllabus topic into 5 or 10 questions max. And if you can frame answers for all those 5 or 10 questions, the preparation is still very easy. Because as I said, it's application of knowledge. For example, what are the values that you have learned from your grandparents? What are the values? Think about it. What are the values that you have imbibed from your grandparents? Empathy. Okay. Punctuality. Okay. Tolerance. Mhm. Respecting mother tongue. Is it a value or a how? Where does it fall? Respecting mother tongue. See, I don't want to take too many classes on ethics because I personally know ethics is all about writing more. So I have to write more. Values, morals, and ethics. We also have something called as rights. Okay. Character. Now, it's very common to interchangeably use the term morals, values, ethics. We commonly do this very naturally, right? But always remember, near universal values or morals are considered as ethics. There is no textbook definition for ethics. Okay, no single person can say ethics. Why? Ethics will change in a lot of ways. Ethics has a lot of impact. Okay, so near universal values or your morals are considered as ethics. Okay, why I am using the word values, I will tell you. Normally near universal morals are considered as ethics. Okay, traits are at individual level. Traits are at individual level or at institutional level. For example, everybody have a trait. All of you have traits. Traits are what? Traits are basic qualities or values. Okay, punctuality is a trait. Some persons will be very punctual. If they open the door, you can literally know it's 9 p.m. or 9 a.m. So they are that punctual. Every day, same time he will take the bike out or something like that. So punctuality is a trait, virtue. Okay, so they can be virtues also. Okay, so traits when accepted at a societal value or at individual thought process is value system. Okay, value. I give importance to something, that is value. Honesty is a value that I respect. So honesty is my value system. Punctuality is again my value system. Okay, so punctuality can be my value system, Aditya's and Kirtana's. Okay, but if entire society thinks that punctuality is a good thing, that become morals. Okay, so when entire society thinks it's a good thing, the individual values can be elevated into the status of morals. You understand, right? Okay, in Venn diagram format, it's like this. Ethics, morals, and values, they overlap. Anything can be anything. A value can be an ethic, a moral can be an ethics, right? So your own value system, when accepted by entire society, more or less it can be called as morals. Okay, clear? Individuals have values, entire society calls it as moral value. Okay, moral values, again morals when accepted by society is moral values. And if the same thing is universally accepted, it doesn't mean temporal or spatial dimension or geographical dimension. If I go to America, still will people celebrate punctuality? Yes, or love, kindness. Let's say kindness. Kindness is a universal value from Antarctica to Arctic or from America to Australia. Everybody will appreciate kindness. So kindness can be an example for ethics. Why? Kindness is a near universal value. Okay, when near universal acceptance is there, some of your value systems, they are called as ethics. Okay, again there is no textbook definition for ethics. Okay, so values are at individual level, morals are at society level, ethics are at universal acceptance, near universal acceptance or universal acceptance. See, near is again my addition. Why near? Because we have to be rational. We have to understand that most people think that kindness is a good thing. You can be that one odd man out and it's not a crime. I don't judge you. Okay, so values, morals, and ethics. Okay, so when UPSC says ethics paper, ethics, integrity, and aptitude, they expect near universal standards, which everybody should be happy with. Okay, now individuals can have values, organizations can also have values. Okay, individuals can have values, organization can have values. Okay, now within societies there can be different morals, morality. Okay, what is morality? According to that society, it is a good thing. Okay, consuming alcohol is good or okay for a certain society? For example, if you go to North India, okay, certain sections of the society are okay in consuming alcohol. Within Telangana also, if you go to certain parts, if you go to Andhra Pradesh, there are certain pockets which believe that alcohol is wrong thing or consuming alcohol is a bad thing. But there are certain societies which are okay with consuming alcohol. So the societal morality of that particular area says it's okay. Right? So morals keep on changing from society to society. That is what we call as relativism. So morals are relative to that particular society. Okay, morals are relative to that particular society. But maybe all societies will say drinking and driving is a bad thing. That can be near universal. So drinking and driving is a bad thing. So ethics is not a theory. Ethics is a thought process where I judge an action as good or bad. So ethics is like a goggles. Ethics is like a specs which will help me decide whether an action taken by someone is a good decision or a bad decision. Drinking and driving. Okay, I was thinking to drink, no problems there. Why? For that society, it's okay. Drinking is not considered as a bad thing in that society. But he was thinking to drive, just thinking. I'm sitting here, I'm thinking to drive. There are also no judgments. Why? I haven't done any action. Okay, but I have already started my car and driving. I'm drunk and driving. Action has been done. That action will be judged on good or bad. Okay, only actions can be measured. Okay, this is one way to decide how ethics will apply. I'm planning to murder Aditya. Okay, that's my thinking. As long as I think, it cannot be judged. Okay, that is determinants of ethics and all those things we will decide. But thinking is not a crime. Okay, but if you bring religious ethics, a religious version of ethics, even thinking is crime. Because what I think is what I do in the future, right? Yes or no? So religion says you should not even think something negative. You understand the traits, right? So there are different schools, different thought process. But for our UPSC exam, when I say ethics, only actions can be condemned or actions can be judged. Okay, there can be omissions and commissions. Not doing something is also an action. Okay, I'm supposed to save someone's life. I am an ambulance driver. Okay, I haven't driven the vehicle. Okay, that is also a problem, right? Omission and commission. As an IAS officer, not doing something is also a crime. Doing something is also a crime. So you'll be judged on omissions and commissions also. I hope you understand. Yes. So values, morals, and ethics. Ethics is near universal. Morals is more about societies. In values is individual. But remember, all the three things will overlap. When a particular value system is accepted by entire society, it becomes morals. When it is accepted by entire society, it becomes ethics. So what is ethical for one society may not be ethical for another society. So ethics are also relative. Ethics are also relative. Clear? Eating vegetarian food is unethical. Sorry, is ethical. Eating non-vegetarian food is unethical. But for a different society, it's totally ethical. So that is why there is no universal definition of ethics. Just like one man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter, it's very difficult to decide what is ethical, because people always try to bring in this situation, circumstances, and cultural, historical, geographical relations. So ethics are determined by a lot of factors. Okay, until recently LGBT was unethical. Suddenly it has become legal. I mean, it's okay, it's not illegal, right? But is it ethical? Does it have a universal acceptance? But it should be ethical, because it's not still accepted by the society. So society still does not consider LGBT as an okay thing. So as an individual, she is okay with her friend being an LGBT or a lesbian or something, right? But society is not okay with it, and it is not universally accepted. But slowly one day everybody will start thinking being a queer or something is not a wrong thing. Okay, so values have to be imbibed in the society, then it becomes near ethical values. Okay, and generally in India we have a perception making money is a wrong thing. Too much money in India is a wrong thing. If someone is making too much money, others, okay, might think it as a unethical thing. I can make a lot of money in ethical ways. Yes or no? But Indian society always had this frugal thought process, like you should be very frugal, even if you have money, you should be very simplicity. And we try to have a imposition of our value system on everyone. So that is also one thought process. I hope you are able to understand. So everything will keep on changing in your ethics papers. There is no final full cut decision. This is ethics, write this. It can never happen. From case study to case study, from situation to situation, what is the best course of action? Only actions will be judged, either committed actions or omitted actions. Not doing action is also an action. Yes or no? Not doing an action is also a action. So if you do an action, what is the ramification? If you don't do something, what is the ramification? So that's one thing. So that is why don't spend too much time on understanding what is deontology, what is consequentialism, what is this, what is that. Okay. And again, it's a timeline approach. There are different thought processes. For example, in Mahabharata time, they said something is dharma or something as ethical. Okay. So before ancient times or something, they have a system. Then you have Western thinkers. Okay, Plato, Aristotle, and all these people. So again, their influence is on the modern day philosophers. Then we have someone more latest. Okay. Then we have present day applied ethics. Okay, for example, artificial intelligence and ethics, privacy and ethics, COVID and ethics. Okay, all these are applied ethics. Lab grown meat, applied ethics. Yes or no? Climate change and ethics. So like this, you will apply your ethics to a lot of contemporary things which are not finalized and settled. For example, a self-driving car is driving you and you killed someone. Who is to blame? Who should bear the liability? You, the car company, the algorithm, what? The opposition party? Who should be blamed? Are the government which gave permission? Yes. There is a very, very famous problem, right? Trolley problem. You must be aware of trolley problem. You are driving in a bus, okay, or a trolley. A trolley is coming down very quickly, right? So here 5 people are working. Here 1 person is working. Okay, so you have to take a decision to move the trolley to the right or left. Trolley means like railway cart. All of you know the railway cart, right? You cannot jump out of the railway track. A train cannot jump. It has to go either right or left. Trolley problem. It's a very, very famous problem. Even Michael Sandel's videos also you will find the same thing. Trolley problem. If I pull the lever, it will take right. If I don't pull, it will go left. So should I kill 5 people or 1 person? Sorry? No? How many of you will kill 5 people? 1? I mean, you don't have a choice, right? You have to kill 5 or 1. There is no in between. So you have to take a decision. 1 person or 5 person. Sir, I will apply the brake. I will jump from the trolley. These things don't work. You have to. That is what I'm saying. You cannot do all those things. That it is traveling at 100 kilometers per hour very quickly. Done. Already decision taken. Split second decisions, right? These are not something you take a pen and paper. Acha, 1, 2, 3. 5 people, one have kidney disease, one have liver disease, he will die in 2 days. You cannot do all those things. You have to take a decision instantly. Ethics is all about that instantaneous decisions, right? So why am I saying this is because why was I saying this? No, the trolley problem. Applied ethics, right? The trolley problem. So when we take a decision within seconds, okay, a artificial intelligence may not do the same thing, right? So you can bring in that iRobot movie example. Have you seen that iRobot movie? iRobot, Will Smith. Yes, no spoilers. Okay. So there is a scene where a accident happens on a bridge. This person is falling, drowning. Then there is one more small girl drowning. Both of them are drowning at the same time. Okay, that's an ethical puzzle for the artificial intelligence. Who should be saved? This person or the kid? Just like the Abdul Kalam and the kid example. Okay, so for a human being, you have your own value system. He said something else, she said something else. But for an artificial intelligence, okay, it has been codified in a particular fashion. Okay, will that limitation save lives or kill lives? That is the dilemma. You get it, right? So we are going for artificial intelligence based cars, okay, but we don't have an ethical standard for that. The same with national security and privacy. We don't have a ethical standard for the same, right? So if you understand all those things very nicely on applied ethics part, okay, the case studies becomes very easy, because case studies are more or less templated, purely templated. Your subordinate is taking corruption, throw him in jail, place post. Okay, so it's templated, right? Next time you won't say, I will discuss, I will think. He has taken corruption, throw him in jail, katam. So you can template your approach, okay, not that mechanistically, but you should appear like you have thought a lot, then you write the same thing anyhow. But for applied ethics, you need to have that thought process. Okay, so I hope you get some clarity, right? Values, morals, and society, everything keeps on changing, some case to case basis, temporal dimension, and who's to be blamed, and all those things. So if you see some case studies, you will get better idea. We'll do some case studies tomorrow. So at least 1 or 2 case studies, if you see, at least your brain will be calm. Okay, ethics is not that rocket science. Ethics is very simple. People made a lot of hangam out of it. The only thing that is needed for ethics is common sense and application. Common sense is polished only through application, right? It cannot be given. Do you know Hermann Hesse? Hermann Hesse. Siddhartha. There is a wonderful novel called as Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. So he has a wonderful quote which says, wisdom cannot be transferred. Knowledge can be transferred, but not wisdom. Do you agree? Knowledge can be transferred, but not wisdom.
Transfer of knowledge precedes development of wisdom.
Can I transfer wisdom?
Through knowledge can be a medium for transferring wisdom.
What is the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Knowledge is
Sorry? Application of knowledge in a very wise way is wisdom.
knowledge is gnanam, sir. Wisdom is buddhi. With knowledge, you differentiate what is right and what is wrong.
Knowledge is buddhi, wisdom is gnanam.
Yes, sir, I somehow had the other
Think
perception.
about it. Son of Satyamurti, there is a dialogue, right? జ్ఞానం అంటే అదే, మనకు తెలుసు పక్కనోడికి చెప్పలేము. You remember that dialogue? Son of Satyamurti, where he kills that villain's brother on a dining table. Rajendra Prasad says a dialogue, right? జ్ఞానం అంటే అదే రా, మనకు తెలుస్తుంది పక్కనోడికి చెప్పలేము. So he copied that dialogue more or less from Hermann Hesse's data. So okay. Okay, yeah. No, don't want to enter that that road. Okay, but you get the idea, right? Knowledge is something. Knowledge means you have to read this. What is the meaning of ethics? I can only give you knowledge, but wisdom is something that is more than knowledge. Wisdom is application of that knowledge. Yes or no? I can teach you what is emotional intelligence, but you may or may not understand it in the way I am saying it, or you may not even apply it in the way I am saying it. So wisdom is something that only comes with application of knowledge. You have to imbibe the knowledge, understand context, experience, then whatever comes is wisdom. So wisdom has to be developed. Wisdom cannot be transferred. So knowledge can be transferred. We can try to transfer wisdom. There is no harm, as he has mentioned, Upanishads, Bhagavad Gita, everything tries to transfer the wisdom. One statement or one line is more than enough to save a life. This too shall pass. That's a quote soaked in wisdom. But this too shall pass is not understood by most people in the way it is supposed to understood. There is no one way to understand it also. So it is very, very difficult to transfer wisdom. Knowledge.
What is your way of understanding it, sir?
This too shall pass. So again, that is what I'm saying, right? Okay, everybody has his own understanding. Let's say, for example, there is a very famous Zen story which says a student comes to the master. Sir, I have been practicing under you for Zen, Zen, meditation and all those things. I think I'm good enough to practice on my own. Then the teacher asks very simply, is it raining outside? Yes, sir. Did you bring your umbrella? Yes, sir. Did you leave it on the left side or the right side of your slippers? Okay, so when I heard the story as a young boy, I was not aware of the wisdom that that lesson is teaching. Okay, so when I said you the same story, did you even understand it, what I'm trying to tell? What is Zen? Zen is a way of life. Dhyan, which went to Japan, become Zen. Okay, Dhyan means in a meditative state, in a attentive state, what we call as live in the moment. Okay, so according to the master, Zen, the practice of Zen means you are living in the moment. So I deliberately do everything I do and I'm 100% aware of what I'm doing. So when I take my umbrella, okay, when I put it on the left side of the slippers, I know what I'm doing. If I have left my slippers there and went inside, if I don't even know what I have done, I haven't lived in that moment. You haven't mastered the Zen. So that's the simple way to tell the story. So that is what, right? Wisdom is something that cannot be transferred. So he told you what is Zen, but you did not practice it. Just think about living in the moment means what breakfast did you have? Yes. Yes. So we have to be aware of that. I mean, we have to be present constantly there in every moment of our work life or active life, or when you are not sleeping, you should know exactly what you are doing, thinking, and what is your action or reaction. That is Zen. That is the mastering of Zen. It will take a lifetime, right? So he hasn't done that. So, and the master has refuted his theory just with a simple question. Okay, so that is wisdom. You get the idea, right? So you have to have that all the thought process and all of those have to come into your thinking. Okay, so done. Yes. Any questions? So read, once you start the journey, it makes very sense.
Wisdom can't be learned
No.
because it can be learned only by experience.
Atma Chintan. Yes. See, I want to patent that word, right? Before Modi does. So Atma Chintan. So Atma Chintan, you have to do a lot of Atma Chintan. A lot of introspection will make you wise. You have to spend a lot of time thinking, contemplating, understanding. So all these things have to be developed, and people can be wise if they spend actually some time on their own selves, right?
Few activities are there which can't be learned just by theory, like car driving or swimming. They have
But
to be
if you have a very attentive mind, you can learn car driving in 3 days or 4 days. Okay, but that calmness of mind or that ability of mind to do exactly what it is supposed to do can come only from contemplation or meditation. So everything will have everything. Everything has an interlinkage, right? If whatever you do will have ramifications. Even driving car is meditation. If you are driving the car in every sense of the term, right? So as people say, when the bow and arrow becomes one, and the logical extension of your hand, you have become the master. So you cannot think that bow and arrow are extension of third party, right? You have to think all of them are your logical extension, but that comes only with a lifetime of practice. Yes or no? Yes, our own bikes don't become our logical extension. They are always a third party because I'm focused something else, ethics class or charya class. Okay, if I'm driving, then I cannot focus. So even when you are doing whatever you are doing, if you are living in the moment, that itself is a Zen. Yes. Clear? No? Umang is like, no, I'm sleepy.
No,
The AI perspective, I felt that if the kid and another person are falling, as a human, my capacity is limited.
Hmm.
I might save one.
Hmm.
But as an AI, I can empower the AI technology to save both.
Let's imagine you are in the middle of the lake. You are a robot. You are in the middle of the lake. You are a robot. Okay. This is a bridge. Okay. Your car has started falling in the river. Okay. You are AI. Yeah. You can call your friends. You can immediately inform 10,000 people. Okay. But they might take 3 minutes on an average to reach that spot. Even the most responsive system, let's say America also, might take 3 minutes. That 3 minutes is more than enough for someone to drown. So at that point, your capability is save to save A or save B. See, limitations, the physics cannot be transcended, right? I cannot teleport someone. If there is such technology as teleportation, probably, which overrides physics and all those things, maybe I will, as an AI, bring all the help I need and protect someone. Right? But these things do happen. So everything has a limited capacity. The concept there is who framed the rules. I might frame a rule saying A is near, B is far. Okay, whichever is nearer should be saved first. This is a 90-year-old person, this is a 10-year-old boy. What is the rule for the AI? Hypothetically, let's say there is a rule which says whichever is nearer should be saved. Okay, then AI will say 90-year-old boy. Okay, can we blame AI? So it has to have such a level of intellectual thinking or independent thinking that it should be given 100% freedom. Okay, then it might choose between these two. Right? Then it might save the boy. Are we willing to give 100% freedom to the AI? Do we have such kind of systems? What will happen? What are the ramifications if we give 100% freedom to this? Okay, what are the ramifications elsewhere? It might, like all the scary sci-fi movies come to a conclusion that all humans are useless, like me. And I don't have the capability. So probably it will have the capability to destroy the planet. Right? So it gets complicated, right? From there on and then on. You get the idea? So continue the discussion tomorrow. Keep reading. The more you read, the better you get. Wisdom cannot be transferred. Only knowledge can be transferred. See you tomorrow.